What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix for Week 11 of the 2021 CFL season. I'm Ryan Coop here with your quarterback preview to kick things off. I'll have running backs, wide receivers, and defensive previews out later today as well. And Week 11 starts Friday night, so I will have a depth chart out on Friday for those games, that game as well, to get you all set for this week. And then I'll have depth chart updates for the games on Saturday. 3 games on the schedule for week number 11, dialing it back from the 5 games the week before. So not as many options this week, especially at quarterback. You only got 6 starters. So there's a smaller field to choose from, and I think there's some interesting picks this week. So let's dive right in and let's take a look at them. Here are, in my opinion, the projected starting quarterbacks for this week. Most notable here, first of all, Saskatchewan, Toronto, and Hamilton are on byes this week. For Montreal, Vernon Adams Jr. is on the 6-game injured list, so Matt Schultz will be getting the start. And Edmonton has decided to bench Trevor Harris for the rematch with Winnipeg this week. So it will be a combination of Taylor Cornelius and Dakota Prukop getting the start. I'm assuming Cornelius will be the one to start, but we'll need to wait for the depth chart for Friday's game between Winnipeg and Edmonton. So let's go through the options here. Starting off, Michael Riley of the BC Lions. I'm saying stay away from Riley this week because the price tag is really high, $11,550. He's facing a Calgary defense that perhaps in the past 2 weeks has seemingly turned things around a little bit. That defensive line has kind of led the way for Calgary in their 2 wins over Saskatchewan. I still think there's quite the space to pass against them. And Riley's been one of the better fantasy quarterbacks this season, putting up several weeks over 20 points. But I don't know. I'm not feeling the matchup at that price point. I think 28.9 is really high to hit. He's only hit that total once back in Week 6 against Ottawa. In his last 3 games since then, 23.6, 20.1, and 8 against the Bombers, which, I mean, any game against Winnipeg is basically an outlier, let's be real. I don't love the option just because of the price point. He'll also be missing his go-to receiver in Lucky Whitehead, who helps him pick up quite a few points by making plays with the ball. So give me a game of Riley and maybe a different matchup and a lower price point before I consider putting him in the lineup this week. Zach Collaros, I'm kind of in the middle on. $8,646 salary. To get 2.5 points per $1,000, you're looking at 21.6 out of him. He faces an Edmonton defense that's been one of the better teams in the league against quarterbacks this year. I think they have the best pass defense in the CFL in terms of yardage given up. They don't give up a ton through the air typically. Last week against Edmonton, Collaros put up 10.3. The couple weeks before that against Edmonton, he put up 12.3. So he hasn't exactly lit it up against the Elks this year. He did have that monster game against BC back in week number 9 where he put up 24.7. But that's the only week on the year he's put up over 20 points. So it's I think a tough pick. Collaros should be a good pick. That Bombers offense is rolling really well, and he's going to get Kenny Lawler back in the lineup. But the fact that most games this year he hasn't passed for over 300 yards makes me a little skeptical of that pick. So I'm kind of in the middle. I'm saying yellow light on Collaros. I'm saying red light on Bo Levi Mitchell. $8,340. Do you want 20.9 points out of him? And while the team has turned it around with back-to-back wins in recent weeks, his fantasy totals have not taken off. In his past 4 games since returning from injury, 14.1, 4.8, 13.4, and 12.3. So the value just isn't quite there. He's also facing a BC defense that is pretty good against the quarterbacks this year as well. And if you remember, back in week number 2, Bo Levi Mitchell throwing 4 interceptions against BC. That ball-hawking Lions defense made misery of his fantasy performance. So I say stay away from Bo until we see him consistently start putting good totals up on the board. I'm cautious on Matt Schultz as the starter for Montreal. We've seen game action over the years from him here and there, and it's been okay. It's been decent. It's been nothing really to write home about. But in the couple plays he's gotten in the past 2 games, he's looked pretty good, I think, in those 2 games, and it makes for a tempting play in CFL Fantasy this week, especially the matchup with Ottawa. They give up 20.5 points on average to quarterbacks. So it makes for a tempting play there. In the last 2 games where he's gotten in for a couple plays, 6.4 and 3.2 points for him in those 2 games. Now we get to see him get his first start of the year, and the reason I'm cautious on him is because I think the pricing is too high for me. Maybe if he was a $5,000, $6,000 quarterback, and I only needed 12.5 or 15 points out of him. Yeah, then I'm considering putting Matt Schultz in my lineup, but I think 20 points is going to be tough to hit. Very few quarterbacks, on average, put up 20-point totals in a week. Normally, it's only 1 or 2. And Ottawa, I think, has some of those big pieces like Abdul Kanay and Sherrod Baltimore back in the defensive backfield. That could help here a little bit, shut things down. So I'm a little nervous that Schultz is not going to hit the full value at an $8,000 salary. I think he has looked good in the time he's played this year, but 20 points I think is a pretty high ceiling for him to hit. I could see him coming in closer to the 10 to 15 point range on the week. Caleb Evans of Ottawa is the quarterback I like the most, I think, this week. Again, assuming he gets the start and they don't go to Taron Christian. But I would assume they want to give Evans the chance to keep growing. They did come close in that game against Montreal on Monday to picking up another win. So $5,000 salary, 12.5 points is what you need from him for full value. And on the year in 3 games so far, he's averaged 15.9, which is not too bad. 25.5, 12.8, and 9.4 in his 3 games this year. So went down a little bit after that start against Edmonton, and he does face Montreal again. But the thing I really like about Evans is, yeah, he hasn't really, tore things up through the air with big touchdown performances, with, consistent 300-yard passing game. But he uses his legs really well. 50-yard rushing games we see from him. That's 5 points right there. That's well on your way to a 12.5 point week. So I like Caleb Evans for that factor. I think as he gets more experience, he's going to be able to round out his game a little bit. And I think he's always dangerous to break one, especially with his running ability to pick up a rushing touchdown even as well. So I like Caleb Evans as a pick this week. And whether it's Taylor Cornelius or if in the chance it is Dakota Prukop, stay away from the Edmonton quarterbacks this week. At $5,000, I'm not, even though it's cheap, not doing it in that matchup with Winnipeg. The Bombers giving up much lower than anybody else, 10.5 points to quarterbacks on the season. The Bombers do not give up points. Last week to Edmonton, they gave up 3. That's now, I think, 5 games this year under 10 points given up. They've given up only 2 passing touchdowns on the entire season. Yeah, I'm not making that statistic up. I believe, assuming I got it correctly, from what I remember reading last week, that is insane. And they force a lot of turnovers. We've seen Taylor Cornelius throw a lot of turnovers so far, so I'm saying stay away from any Edmonton quarterback this week against the Bombers. I expect much of the same as long as that defense keeps it up. And 10 weeks into the season, I think I'm past the point of waiting for it to crash and burn because it hasn't yet. So I say stay away from the Edmonton side of things there. So those are the options at quarterback this week. Again, a smaller field to choose from and some interesting options with Riley really being the only very high-priced option this week. I think you've got some interesting plays if you go with Collaros or Schultz. And I like the play of Caleb Evans, just looking for a cheap quarterback and then spending your money elsewhere to get the premium points from big producers at other positions. As I mentioned off the top of the show, I will have running back preview out next, and then wide receivers and defense later today as well. Depth chart updates out on Friday and Saturday. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't. If you have any fantasy questions, put them in the comments section or tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42. It starts with a K. A link to it is in the video description. And if you want to play CFL Fantasy alongside myself and other viewers, check the description there for a link to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix group over on the official CFL Fantasy site. Play alongside myself and other viewers this week and every week throughout the 2021 CFL season. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.